Today we are going to talk about how the defense may or might not have changed since Mike Stoops was fired following the Texas game, and how Baker Mayfield does not suffer fools. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we're going to talk about how Baker Mayfield does not suffer fools and whether or not the defense has changed underneath Mike Stoops. And what did you expect Baker Mayfield to do after he thumped Cincinnati with Hue Jackson on the Cincinnati Bengals sideline? You expected him to what? Shake a hand, have a group hug there, whispering sweet nothings in his ear like they do at the end of some of these games where you see fellas who like each other. Hue Jackson and Baker Mayfield don't like each other, bruh. You knew this. You knew this from jump. We saw it in Hard Knocks. It was Baker for which people were rallying around, and not just that. Hue Jackson was talking in his ear, talking about, hey, man, you know, you're going to have an opportunity to do things. You're going to have an opportunity to be great. We're going to start Todd because, well, he's won games in this league and so forth, so on. And we all know that Hue Jackson was angling to try to keep his job in 2019 because if he starts Baker right away and Baker doesn't play well, he thinks that he's going to get fired. But folks who know from Baker Mayfield also know it's probably not what's going to happen. He's probably going to go and set the world on fire like he has since he got to Texas Tech, since he got to Oklahoma, now with the Cleveland Browns. And I know the stats running around about what kind of a passer he is and how much better the Cleveland Browns are since he's the signal caller. But look, he is taking over the locker room. His charisma, his attitude, his moxie is infectious. It's getting into the offensive line. It's getting into the backfield. It's getting into the wide receivers. And frankly, the defense didn't really need his help. I'll give Greg Williams credit on that, man, because those dudes are playing out of their minds. And if that defense is still the same one next year, and this offense gets a few more pieces, particularly on the offensive line, my goodness, Cleveland could actually be a problem next year. They get a guy in charge that they believe in and that they like. But one of the first things that Hue Jackson did when he got fired as the head coach and his offensive coordinator, Todd got thrown out with him, was talk about how he wanted every other quarterback. He wanted Josh Allen. He wanted Josh Rosen. He wanted Carson Wentz. He wanted Jared Goff. He wanted everybody but the guy that Cleveland took number 1 overall in the 2018 NFL draft. Are you kidding me? Number 1, that's an insult to anybody. But Baker Mayfield does not suffer insults and suffer fools. A dude calling him to be his prospective agent asked him what it was like for Bob Stoops to offer him a scholarship, and Baker hung up on him. Why? Because we know what he knows, which is Bob Stoops ain't offering him no scholarship. He showed up on Bob Stoops' doorstep and said, I'm here to play. And he earned one. That's the thing about this guy that national media just doesn't get. His makeup, his background, as the youth would say, is built different. The man's come up is unlike anybody else's. Walk-ons to Heisman doesn't happen. Walking on to Oklahoma, starting quarterback, certainly doesn't happen. I would actually argue that it's harder to walk on as a quarterback and end up starting quarterback at Oklahoma than it is to win a Heisman Trophy. But with Baker Mayfield, you know that going in. If you slight him, he remembers. He responds on Twitter. His notes app is probably still full with stuff like Damian Woody saying that he needs to grow up. Yeah, okay. You're going to tell a guy to grow up who's starting in this league, who's had to do it his way the entire way? No, the man's good because he has the chip on his shoulder. I got one on mine, so I recognize it. There are lots of people in the world for which you are still proving wrong, and there is one person in the world for which you have to prove it every day, and that's yourself. And Baker Mayfield is doing that every single day. He's doing it the best way he knows how, the only way he knows how, and you know what? He's been winning everywhere he's gone. So perhaps it was Hue Jackson who was wrong to try to seek out Baker Mayfield and shake his hand. Then you don't get embarrassed because you know what the score is. Or you weren't paying attention to this kid at all for the past 9 months. Which, you know, frankly, is probably closer to the truth. Now, as for whether or not the defense has changed since Mike Stoops got fired following the Texas game, I would argue yes. Against TCU and Kansas State, the boys were revitalized. They were playing for somebody they liked. They believed in what they were doing. And it felt like the scheme had been simplified into something that they all understood and they all could execute at a very high level against Texas Christian and Kansas State. And then in the month of November, it all fell apart. Now, did it fall apart because the offenses are so good, Tech, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia in particular, or did it fall apart because all of a sudden they reverted back to some horrible way of playing defense? I think it's somewhere in the middle there, man, because this is the same defense that held FAU to 14 points with Mike Stoops as the coordinator, and it's the same defense that gave up 14 points total to Kansas State and 20 points as a defense to TCU. Now, also take into account, you played 3 of the best wide receivers in the country in 4 weeks in Tylan Wallace at Oklahoma State, Antoine Wesley at Texas Tech, and David Sills at West Virginia, including a Heisman candidate in West Virginia's Will Grier. So it wasn't as if you weren't going to give up some points. In this day and age, where most folks think it's impossible to play defensive back, yeah, you're probably going to get torched once or twice, but to the degree that Oklahoma's getting torched, the narrative is just wrong. Because, yeah, they're giving up a lot of yards and they're giving up a lot of points, but if they don't score in the West Virginia game, Oklahoma doesn't win that game on the road in Morgantown. So perhaps that's the thing that has changed, is you have a feast or famine attitude when you're playing well. Which is why OU fans have been yelling over and over again, just send the blitz, dude. Send the blitz and play bump and run. Go big or go home. If you're going to get beat, get really beat. And I think that's how you have to play with this defense. You have to swing for the fences or strike out, because this trying to hit balls back up the middle just ain't working for the defense. Man, I'm mixing football and baseball, and it is that kind of video. Let's go. So don't try to put the shift on against Texas and prevent LJ Humphrey and Colin Johnson from catching passes and open yourself up to big plays in the run game or by Devin Duvernay or Keontae Ingram or Sam Ellinger. Play man coverage, play bump and run, blitz some folks, and see if you can't hit some home runs of your own. Because if you get 6 points out of the defense, you're winning. If you get 3 turnovers out of the defense, you're winning. And you get to play that way because the offense is so good. So use your kids to their strengths and then watch them ball out. I think that's the way that the defense might have changed, is that Ruffin might be a little bit more inclined to let the kids do what they do well, as opposed to try to play in his system or play in his scheme the way that Mike Stoops did with the defense when he was calling it. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.